Hi everyone, welcome back to my Python course. Last lesson we downloaded an IDE called PyCharm, and in this lesson we're going to launch, do some basic configurations with it, and write our first line of code. So to launch PyCharm on a Mac, simply go to Spotlight and type PyCharm. On a Windows system, go to the startup menu or on the desktop, depending on your installation. So we open up PyCharm for the first time. It brings a prompt to import settings. We don't need to do that right now. This is our first run. The next window is for the GUI, which is really the look and feel of it. Again, we're going to skip this for right now and continue with the installation. So after the installation completes, which is quick, we create a new project. So creating a new project is exactly what it sounds. We create a new project to hold our Python code. So we'll call it my first project. I'll have to call it my first project too because I have other instances of it on this computer, but you can call it my first project. So that brings it up, and PyCharm creates a virtual environment. That's something we don't need to be concerned with now, but it's good. The tip of the day, lots of useful information here, but for now we can close it. So the first thing we're going to do here is make this a little bigger, easier to see. We have our projects up here on the left, so we right-click that and we create a new Python file. This is our program file. We'll call this hello world, or anything you want, but that's just easy. And as you can see now, we have our projects on the left, and we have our editor, a text editor, which we can write the programs. So there are three basic things that we should configure with PyCharm before we proceed. To do that, we go to PyCharm Preferences, and we see an almost infinite amount of customizations and options we can set here. We're only going to focus on three. The first one is the theme. So the theme right now is Darkula. There's only one other theme on the Community Edition, and that's Light. This is a matter of preference. It's how you feel about it. I personally like the light version, so I click OK on that, and this is what I get. So again, it's completely a matter of preference, but you really only have two options in the Community Edition, so you pick the one that works for you. The next preference is the font. Easiest way to find settings in this list of customizations is just to go to the search window on top, and we want to look at the font. So right now the font is 12. That's fine for most people. You can up it to whatever you want. You could go 24, you can make it whatever. I will stick with 16 for this, but that is an important setting and most people like to customize this. So I will stick it to 16 and click OK. And the final setting that we need to verify is what's called the interpreter. The interpreter is another name for the Python software that we downloaded in the last lesson. So we just want to make sure that the versions are correct. Again, if you search for it here, it makes it a lot easier. And as you can see up here, the project interpreter is 3.7, and that's the version we downloaded. And this is important because the Mac, for example, comes with Python pre-installed, and it's 2.7, and it's obviously an older version and could cause problems. We want to learn on the latest version, so this is all good. And now we have our editor, and we're going to type our first piece of code right here. The one that most people use when they start a program is the hello world, print hello world. So let's do that. And that's it. We'll right click the space and run hello world. And on the bottom, the results of our program are here. And as you can see, it printed at hello world. It didn't have any errors. And this is just the path to where the file is. This when you write a program in Python, it creates a py extension. So what we've done here is basically created a file called helloworld.py, and that is our code. You could run that at the command prompt if you put Python 3 in front of it. So again, not really necessary to know all this now, but this is an overview of what's it doing. If we look at PyCharm, we have 3 sections that we're going to work in. So on the left, we have a list of projects. Right now, we only have one, my first project. On the right is the editor. This is where we'll write all the code. And PyCharm will check our syntax or the style of writing and ensure that we're compliant with Python. And then on the bottom is what's called a console, and that shows the results when we execute the program. So let's try another example here just to drive this point home. Let's try something with basic math. X equal to 4, y equal to 3. And then we print again to the console x by y. So all we're doing here is we create 2 variables, x equal to 4, y equal to 3, and then we're multiplying them and printing the results. So this is what we would expect, 12. And this is very basic math, but it shows the concept of putting values in variables and calculating from that. The last example I'll show is how to take input from a user and print out that input. So this is a very common thing in programming. You ask the user to enter their name or age or social security number or whatever, and then you get that data and you process it however your program needs to process it. So in a very simple example, we would create a variable called user input, and we'd say that's equal to input. Now input is the Python function. And you don't have to understand all this now, but it's a function that captures the keystrokes from the user, and we can use that variable then to process it later. So the example here would be what, if I could spell, your name. And then when the user inputs the answer, we can print that out to the console. So again, very simple. Stops the user, asks them to print their name, and once they put their name in, we print out their answer. So if we run that, now you notice up here on the right, you have a little green arrow that'll run the programs. You can still right click and run it this way. It's whichever you want. But if you click this icon, it'll stop. The program will stop when it hits the input statement up here, and it will prompt the user for input. So it's asking the user what their name is. I will put my name as Paul. And as you can see, the second line, line 4, prints out the variable which I entered, which was Paul. We can make this a little more interesting by typing now we have to concatenate this. We have to use a plus sign to add the hello string here, which is just what we type, to the user input variable and put them together, and we should get hello, whatever's entered it from the user. So let's run it, see what happens. Again, prompts the user for the name, so I'll type my name in here, and then I'll hit enter, and it says hello Paul. So this is basic, but it's very common, as I said, in programming, and it gets a lot more complicated, obviously, than this. But these are 3 basic ideas of programming in Python. First one is just getting a statement and printing it out, and then doing basic math calculation, and finally taking user from the input. Now Python does much, much more, but this is just to give you a feel of programming. We're going to explain all of this as we move forward. But for now, you can tap yourself on the back and say, I wrote my first Python program. So that's it for this lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it. In the next lesson, we'll talk about the fundamentals of programming with Python. I also suggest that the best way to watch these videos is side by side with PyCharm. So as you're watching the video, you can program. You can stop the video by hitting the spacebar on your computer, and you can type the code into your version of PyCharm. And that's the best way to get the most value from these videos. With Python programming, like most things, requires practice and doing it. So that's the best way. Until the next time, take care.